in the context of the spreading coronavirus. Okay, so this will be a kind of a very thoughtful and thought-provoking examples which I had it when I was reading this, when I was doing a kind of this exercise. Okay, so you can try it out. You can do a kind of a small sampling, or you can evolve small understanding out of this. The second experimental design is that it's a quasi experimental design. In the quasi experimental design, we introduce comparative groups or comparable groups. Comparable groups. And we will be able to understand these groups very critically on certain grounds. Okay. The second is that under this experimental design, we are not going to pick up the population randomly. The selection process doesn't follow the principle of randomization. Rather, it is purposive in nature. So here the researcher plays a crucial role in selection of the group. Sometimes this also questioned under the internal validity, selection biasness. This used to be criticized for selection biasness in certain cases, in certain rare cases they used to question this. Okay. On the other hand, after doing a kind of, that means we are going to have a kind of multiple groups. We are going to have multiple groups, and we are going to introduce different set of variables to each of these groups. Variables to each of these groups, and try to check what is the outcome. And under this quasi-experimental design, we have non-equivalent control group design. Non-equivalent control group design. So that means, like, under this quasi-experimental design, this non-equivalent control group design comes. How we are going to do this non-equivalent control group design is that I'm going to do a kind of an example out of this. So the first is that I'm going to pick up a different set of groups. First is the experimental group. One experimental group. The second is that it's a comparison group, and the comparison group 3 and the comparison group 4. I have taken multiple groups here. This is the pre-test, this is intervention, and this is post-test. Okay. Now I'm going to define the experimental conditions. The first group, experimental conditions, E1. I want to look at the performance. For instance, I'm going back to the same example, very easiest example. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at that, for instance, the student's performance in the submission of the project. Who is having a kind of the best project ideas? Okay, who is coming up with the best project? So the first idea is that the experimental group is that I'm going to kind of make a kind of the group. You can call it as G1, who all comes within one discipline. And I'm going to ask them to come up with the idea of technological ideas over a period of a time. So this is what the outcome which I am expecting. So I am expecting that this experimental group who all come within one discipline, they have to come up with the idea of technological ideas. Then I am moving to the kind of the comparison group, that is C1. This group is that G2. So I'm expecting, I'm trying to like mix two disciplines here. And what I'm expecting is that this particular group should come up with technological ideas along with the implementation process. They are also supposed to tell about how they are going to implement the ideas. Then there is a third group, C2, group G3. I'm going to bring a kind of an additional discipline, that's 3 disciplines, and I'm going to tell them that this particular group should come up with technological ideas, tech ideas, plus implementations, and also the impact of their technological ideas. When they implement that idea, how it's going to impact the society. So the third group, I'm going to club it out, that's C3. This is group 4 I'm making. So when I make this group 4, I'm going to bring a kind of an hybrid community. Hybrid group. In this group, I'm going to give I'm going to say that whether they're going to fall under this technological ideas or technical ideas plus implementations or tech ideas, implementation and impact. Rather, I'll be telling them to come up with a problem, and they should able to solve the problem. That means with minimum errors. Okay, so this is what the conditions which I have decided. So when I decide this, so I make a kind of a pre-test of this. So here I look at what is this group compositions are. What is this? Group compositions are. So the group compositions consist of this, and I'm going to clearly define them that whatever the I'm going to clearly look at them that what is their characteristics, what is the age factor, what kind of an experiences do they have, okay, the knowledge aspect, the subject discipline, everything I will be able to clearly understand this. That becomes a kind of the compositions. So I make here is that E1, this one is C1, C2, C3. here the intervention is that whatever they will be asking, okay, so to complete the project, to complete the projects, so I'll be able to give that the interventions, okay. So maybe like they'll be expecting funding, instruments, whatever the resources they are going to ask. So I'm going to introduce all these interventions here. That means it will be a kind of an I1, I2, I3, and then I4. And remember this all these resources are whatever the resources which each group is trying to ask. And eventually after this giving this resources to all these groups, and I would like to evaluate this group in terms of E1, C1, C2, C3. I would like to test them that which group is able to come up with novel ideas, which group is able to come up with able to like accomplish the task which has been assigned to them. So suppose if the groups are not able to, none of the groups are not able to do the task, then I would like to recheck that what is the problem with the group compositions. What is the problem with the group compositions? What is the problem with the resources? Because here I am able to give a kind of whatever the resources, facilities, everything, whatever the things which the group is asking. So we are able to provide each and every resources, but at the end of the day, we are going to get the result. Suppose if the results are negative, then we will be examining that what conditions which didn't produce the positive results. Suppose if we are able to get a kind of a very good results, then we will be able to check that what factors are responsible for the positive results. So this is how the non-equivalent control group design works. But this is something which is kind of an interesting design method compared to a kind of the true experimental design. Here you will be able to look at, for instance, associations, time, as well as whether it is in terms of spurious, non-spurious characters. At the same time, the context as well as the process mechanisms. Okay, so this is non-equivalent group is selection, which is purely like a kind of we will be able to take a certain sample, certain group of people. Specifically, we are going to take it. Purposefully, we are going to take it. It's not something which is randomly we want to do this. Okay, so under this quasi-experimental design, there is another set of an experimental design. There are another set of an experimental design, that is repeated measures panel design. Repeated measures panel design. In this design, there are no comparative groups. No comparative groups. Rather, we have only one group, that's an experimental group. Here you will be able to see the impact of this. Will be helpful to see the impact of any repeated measures over a period of time. Okay, over a period of time, but with only to the groups which we have picked up. Okay, that means here the model will be, there will be a pre-test and then the intervention and then the post-test. But the group G1 will be there, interventions, in the course of the interventions you will be able to now and then, often you will be able to introduce different set of interventions at regular period of a time. For instance, first month you are introducing one variable, and the second month you are able to introduce another variable. Like this, repeatedly you're trying to introduce different set of one variable until you get the result, eventual outcome. Okay, so this is something which is kind of related to a kind of an panel design, where you will be able to collect data with the same set of a population, Okay. This helps you to understand that whether they are able to improve, for instance, the experimental groups are able to improve their performance, or able to improve their thinking, knowledge, or any other things. For instance, good example is that for instance, giving a different set of baskets to control the waste generation in a household. Okay, so for instance, recently the government of India has come up with a kind of a program where they try to distribute 3 different baskets to segregate the waste. 3 different baskets to segregate the waste. But at the end of, for instance, what happened in our home, I'm going to tell them. At the end of the 3 months, we misplaced all the 3 baskets. All the 3 baskets, and we started once again putting all the items, all the materials in one basket happened. That means, what is the very idea of introducing the basket was falsified. Okay, that means, what is the thing is that we stopped. What happened here is that the first is that we gave basket, okay, but without giving the knowledge on how to segregate it. Okay, when we give the basket to a household woman, we are also supposed to give the knowledge of how to segregate the materials, different set of materials. It may be a food waste, it may be a kind of the covers of snacks, or all this materials. How we are supposed to segregate? We are supposed to give the knowledge of this also. Suppose I am only giving the basket, but we are not able to tell that the knowledge behind the segregations. That means ultimately the purpose of giving the basket fails. This is one. The second one is that I'll be moving on that I am also giving that basket as well as the knowledge. Okay, but I am not able to check that the people are able to practice it. Okay, that's the one. So the basket plus knowledge plus practice. I should always re-examine that whether these experimental groups are exactly practicing the knowledge which has been delivered to them. Suppose if they are not able to practice it, then I would like to go and check that what is stopping the household women not to put the waste in the exact basket. So I will be able to understand this problem, and once again I remodified the certain interventions which happens. So this is something which is a kind of a repeated measures panel design, which helps to examine, for instance, in the case of the sanitations or in the case of waste segregations, we will be able to very, very simple methodology. We can use very simple methods to understand this. Okay, the repeated measures panel design. It helps to the good example is that I gave that the waste segregation, waste management. The the third idea is that the third idea is on time series design. The time series design helps to understand the impact of certain program policies, especially over the period of a time on a given population. Okay, here the time series analysis is that, for instance, recently, like example, recently we have introduced that wearing the seat belt is compulsory. It's a mandatory. So the violation of this norm, is a punishable offense. So I would like to check that whether really this law works in the real context or not. Okay, how do I check this? Is that I'll be able to check on two grounds. One is the number of cases on violation of the act. At the same time, I'll also check that the number of accidents that happen and how that those accidents affected the driver as well as the the co-drivers. Okay, so you will be able to do a kind of two things, and also I will be able to take, for instance, it is very easy to take insurance claims and check whether really these kind of laws create any impact on the society or not. Okay, on the society or not. Okay, so if it doesn't create impact on the society for over a period of a time, that means like these despite of having this law, these laws are for instance, in real context, it doesn't really reflect. That means it didn't get into the minds of the drivers. In order to stop this, for instance, these days the automobile sectors have come up with that. The automobile sectors have come up with a kind of given a kind of sound warning. A kind of beep sounds comes. So if the driver forgets to put the seat belt, and automatically the sound comes, beep sound comes, and immediately the driver gets a kind of unconsciousness and he puts the seat belt. So automatically these kind of the technological interventions, for instance, these kind of technological interventions, it also like the nullifies these kind of the norms. So over and over a period of time, this all becomes a kind of an outdated in nature because of new technologies which comes into the society. Okay, and the third experimental design. And the third experimental design is that it deals with ex post facto control design. Ex post facto control design. So this ex post facto control design is exactly deals with a kind of an interventions or a treatment which has already occurred. Intervention or a treatment which has already occurred. Or put it in the other way, that the ex post facto control design is that it doesn't even require any interventions or the treatment. It doesn't require any interventions or treatment. Okay, that means the events are ongoing. Okay, or the events have been completed. So, for instance, you will be able to understand. Good understanding is that you want to understand that what happens. What happens in the post-COVID society? Post-COVID society. Okay, that means some sort of an event has already occurred. You are only trying to understand that what happens aftermath. What happens aftermath? In other cases, is that if it is, for instance, if it is an ongoing activity. For that, I'm going to take a kind of two different groups. In a company, I'm going to take a kind of two different groups. One group is controlled by managerial authority.